Hello everyone, welcome again in this forgotten series to buy or not to buy. Today I will come to you with this American premium heavy tank on tier 8, which is called T77. Of course, if you look at this tank, it brings you some strange feeling that you've seen this tank somewhere else, and of course you're right, because if you look closer on American Tech Tree, on tier 10 we have the tank that looks exactly the same, another American heavy, T57 heavy. Look closely, a part of slightly different model of the gun. Those tanks are absolutely 98% the same. Look, the shape of the turret is slightly different. This is T77, look at the turret, and this is T57. Slightly, frontal turret is slightly different, but then if you look on the hull is exactly the same like in T57 heavy. Look at the shape, T57, T77. From the back, T57, T77. Slightly different model here, but all around it is exactly the same tank, and it's not far from the truth, because if you look at the parameters, let's get to the website to compare those two tanks. Take a look at this. Of course, DPM and penetration, don't forget this is tier 8 versus tier 10, so DPM and penetration is obviously different because of tier difference, but from here we had so much similar parameters of this gun. Alpha 380 versus 400, only 20% of alpha difference. Rate of fire 5.56 versus 7.62 on tier 10, which is again not a big difference, only 30%. Reload 1907 versus 1862, only 2% difference, so it's pretty much the same speed of reload. The only difference is here, of course, if we get 3 shells with 400 alpha, that would be really extremely OP tank on tier 8, so we have only 2 shells, and on T57 there were 3 shells. Caliber 120mm, again the same, and shell velocity 1100 versus 1067, 3% difference, so exactly the same speed of the shell. So as you can see, those guns, they're really similar. So basically you have tier 10 gun on tier 8. What else you want to get? Of course, we're supposed to talk about armor of this tank, but we're gonna talk about this in a second. Here we have armor profile of T77, and as you can see, all around is red, which means it's really strong. The only weak spot of this tank is this lower part of the hull, which is 120mm, and real armor is 184, so you're supposed to look for places where you can use your hull down. On the turret, the lower part here is 194mm, only this edge here, and then if you go up, 193, 195, and it goes up to 111, 210, and this really well profile armor has 320, 380, so it's almost unpenetratable. The only problem could be here on the bottom. 200mm with premium shells could be penetrated, but all around the turret is well armored. If you look on the side, of course the sides are weak, same armor profile like on T57 on tier 10, so nothing fancy. Of course you're supposed to protect your sides because you have only 80mm here, 180 here, so it's more than obvious. People always shooting on this part, because here the armor is pretty much tricky because of those different shapes. Side armor 97, less than 100mm all around. Rear armor is obvious gonna be weak, only 72mm, so sometimes in most cases high explosives will get here very easy. 120mm on the bottom of the turret, and here 81mm, so if you aim on this edge, in most of the circumstances you should be able to penetrate with high explosives. Normal shells coming here like in a butter. The huge benefit of this tank is the gun depression. As all American tanks, he has 10 degrees of gun depression, and then imagine if you put yourself in the hull down position and cover all this bottom part. Look at the difference of the armor. 370, 360 to 380 to the top. Turret 250, 230. So all of that except maybe those parts here just by the gun all around you have a really strong armor, 250, 280. The only weak spot on the turret gonna be here, 120 millimeters. But then, if you stand on in a cooldown position and move forward, backwards, you know, and of course sometimes you can move your lift your gun and cover that weak spot. It's gonna be extremely difficult to aim and hit you. So that's the thing. That's basically a basic of a cooldown position. So as you can see, the frontal armor is really solid. If you look on armor performance, as you can see, the front of the tank is all red except this lower part of the hull. This is versus tier 7. So tier 7 has a really serious problem to frontal attack of this tank. The lower part, of course, it could be penetrated, and of course commander's hatch, but all turret is really strong. Versus tier 8, pretty much similar situation. Of course, sides and back, like we just talked about, they are really easy to penetrate. And tier 9, like I said, just by the gun, this part of the turret by the gun is easy to penetrate for tier 9. Of course, like we just talked about, the hull, lower part of the hull and commander's hatch, obvious weak spots, and the side and the back the same like before. So even against tier 9, if you manage to wriggle your turret, it should be sometimes difficult to penetrate, but don't rely too much on that. If you stay in a hold down position with using your gun depression, that might be slightly different because that part of armor gonna be slightly increased. So maybe again using armor profile and the shape of the turret could be slightly different to penetrate, but then on tier 9 could be penetrated. That's all. Okay, now let's talk about details of parameters of this tank. Yeah, as you can see, I have no equipment installed on this tank yet, which means all the parameters are pretty raw and could be upgraded. Let's start with the gun. Aiming time 4.8 is not bad and could be reduced to about 4.2 with the proper equipment. Could be reduced to 4.2, 4.3, which is very good for a heavy tank. Dispersion 0.344, again could be reduced to 0.32, 0.3225, which is again nice, good, accurate gun. DPM 2076 HP. Magazine reload time 19.47. So the whole magazine, 2 shells are reloaded within 19.5 seconds. Shell reload time, single shell reload time is 2.5 seconds, and you get 2 shells in the magazine. And then if you consider 380 of average damage on regular shells, 320 of damage on premiums, and 440 on high explosives. So if you consider that 380, so average gonna be between 350 to 400, 410. So let's say that's gonna be 350 damage per shell. So within 2.5 seconds, you're able to deal about 700 alpha damage on tier 8. That's amazing. That makes this tank so crazy up. Penetrations 221 on regular shells. This is pretty enough for most of the tanks to fight against, and the only problem I've seen, that was frontal attack on Tiger 2, because his frontal armor is way too strong to be penetrated even by premium shells of this tank. But again, who's crazy enough to stand in the frontal attack against such a monster like Tiger 2, which we know has one of the strongest armors on tier 8. So like we said, 221 on regular shells, 249 on premiums. If you increase that by the proper equipment, could be increase to about 255, 256, and then you can easily penetrate most of it, even heavy tanks. And high explosives on 50 millimeters. Gun depression 10 degrees, which is obviously pretty much average for American tanks, and is fantastic. 10 degrees is a lot. And elevation 12 degrees. So as you can see, it has an extremely strong gun. For tier 8 is a seriously extremely strong gun. Turret we just talked about in when we talk about the armor profile. And let's have a look on the engine. Weight of this tank is 59.28 tons and engine power 946 horsepower. That gives us power to weight ratio on 16 horsepower per ton, which is very good for heavy tank. It's really, really good. That gives us a top speed forward 35 km per hour and reverse 18, which is again really good for heavy tank. That gives us a chance to quickly hide from dangerous position. And average speed is about 29 to 30 km per hour, which is again for heavy tank is pretty good. So as you can see, altogether we have quite solid heavy tank on tier 8 with really outstanding gun, which gives you huge advantage and makes it a fantastic damage dealer on tier 8. If you want to check that you like this gameplay, the style of this tank, go to tier 10, take T77 heavy, play a few battles. Of course, it's pretty much the same relation between T57 on tier 10 and T77 on tier 8, except this fantastic gun, of course. The price of it, considering the current situation of World of Tanks Blitz, I'm not sure if I want to convince someone to spend money on that game, but if you have some gold stored or collected from some, I don't know, from the adverts or from some events, currently in the market, this tank costs, what is it? This tank costs 8,500 of gold, which is pretty good price for that tank. And if you don't like autoloaders, I can recommend T54 E2 Shark for 8,500. Again, this is seriously solid heavy tank. Of course, on the channel you can find review of this tank from some time ago, but still this tank hasn't been changed since that, and is quite updated. So if you consider to buy Shark, have a look on. I will try to add a link to this review in description or in the comment section of this video. Right, so for now that's it for me. If you like this video and you want to see more of tank reviews and materials that you like on this channel, please consider to subscribe the channel, leave the thumb up on this video, which is the most important for us, for creators. The thumbs up and comments. Of course, if you have any thoughts about the tank, or if you have some requests you want to see the tank in tank review, you can leave also in the comment. So that helps us a lot to increase the reach, and then of course to appreciate our work with all those videos. So like I said, thank you very much for coming today. I hope you enjoy it, and I really hope I'm gonna see you next time. Take care.